Welcome. Many thanks for joining us. Many thanks to all the speakers who have agreed to participate in our today's event, the control of expenditure for the recovery of Ukraine. That's the 7th event which we're conducting using this topic. And today we will look at very specific angle as the energy effective recovery. This presentation is monthly, and every month, let me remind you, for everybody who doesn't know about our project, we are reviewing the latest news, public expenditures in the recovery sphere, and we are covering some special topics, one or two, which pertain to recovery. My name is Maria Rybko. I am the Deputy Manager of the Center of Economic Strategy, and today I have my colleagues with whom we're working on this project, financed by the European Union. And please put the questions in Q&A or in chat. Today, we will be focusing on a special topic on the energy effective recovery. I will present you our analysts a little bit later. Let me first talk about my colleagues who should tell us what has been happening as of now. And the first, I would like to ask Alexandra Bitley, who is coming from the Institute of, to talk about the recovery news. Welcome to all. As Maria has already mentioned, we will be talking today about the energy efficiency. I think this is a very important topic, but our regular news should come first. Regarding the normative regulatory framework, it's very important for us that the government has approved the Ukraine plan, which identifies 151 indicators within 69 reform areas that will allow for budget support under the EU's Ukraine facility. Because yes, within Ukraine plan, we're talking about the recovery and what needs to be done to make sure that this recovery is effective. We're talking about the energy efficiency. Maria will talk more about it. Also, in the Ukrainian plan, we have the special component in order to get the money from the European Union, who has foreseen money for the recovery. So for us, it's very important, and we really hope that that the European Union will adopt this plan, and this will help us to get financing under all components which are within Ukraine facility. As of today, the work is ongoing in the program of comprehensive recovery. That's a very good document where, how, and why we need to make reconstruction in the communities. The Kiev Oblast administration, this is the pilot project. At least we should see what is approved, and we can make conclusions for the future. Together with experts, we have finalized the architecture of the documents on the spot. Then we should put in changes into the regulatory framework. Why it's important to make sure that the local self-governance could plan there, and that we would not be mixed up with these documents, to make sure all of it and it will all be connected, the strategic document with the budgeting. Working group has already been working on it, but for the time being, while we don't have the draft law that DREAM would make as a must to be used, the plan of Ukraine already has foreseen that. And from the important things, we also have the draft law on the principles of democracy at the level of local self-government. It involves community involvement in local decision-making, local initiatives, public hearings, general meetings, petitions for consultations. Why it's important? Because the community has to take part in the decision-making, and the programs of comprehensive recovery, they definitely should include local residents. Let me also recovery, we should also have up to 30% the representatives of the community, and therefore, again, as a principle, the minister, and there were some calls from the parliamentaries to join such groups. So the activity should come from the citizens themselves. When we're talking about the distractions, about financing, we can see when we are comparing data, unfortunately, the destruction is faster than the restoration of the social infrastructure. And that's exactly the problem of our today's events or today's life. Of course, the restoration should be there, but we have to really clearly decide where, how, and what we should restore. Do we need to restore schools like in the frontline zone, or definitely we should build shelters to begin with, and the educational process to be transferred into shelters which are available in various cities, like for instance in Kharkiv, because children do require education, but unfortunately restoration of schools in such places is very difficult to say that it's really reasonable, because the arrivals can be in any case. So again, what we presented last time, this RDNA, this rapid needs assessment that the World Bank has done, unfortunately, it shows that we need even more funds for the recovery. DREAM, as we said, is still is an experiment, but at the same time, the feeling is ongoing. It's interesting that we don't have that much of financing for projects, but the communities have started to be faster in terms of submitting their projects for financing. Some communities are doing this at least to shed light on their projects so the donors could see them. Of course, we understand that we have limited financing from the state budget, really little. Today, we have 1,526 projects. These are the projects which are approved in DREAM, but even the ones which are implemented, some are lacking financing. 39 billion of confirmed funding out of a need of 107 billion. Therefore, of course, the communities are expecting to get some additional financing. The various communities are supplying these projects not in a very uniform manner. Over the last months, we can see these are the projects that were submitted last month. You can see various regions here from the state monitoring. We can see that Kiev, Lviv, and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast have supplied most of the projects. Yeah, we understand that maybe like Donetsk Oblast is not participating in this. Maybe sometimes they don't have the capacity, because capacity is one other big problem, which can be explained by this graph. This is the number of projects. These are all the projects which are there. And the content of many projects, whenever all the documents are supplied, and the fully filled out questionnaire. Of course, the questionnaire has several hundreds of questions, and it's the feedback from communities that it's very difficult for them to they are using their accounts on Dream. Because they also show the availability of projects, the readiness of the projects, are there any calculations for the social effect, etc., etc. When we talk about the financing of recovery over the last months, we can see that altogether 8.7 billion hryvnia was spent on various objects. This is the factual expenditures for the recovery of objects. We are very much thankful to the Ministry of Recovery that they're sharing this information, the one that we can share with you. Most of the financing was coming to the general education, schools, also preschool education, as well as the energy infrastructure and various other objects. We have quite a lot of other important critical infrastructure objects, including roads and bridges. When we talk about the financing and liquidation, the liquidation fund last year, we talked a lot more about this liquidation fund. We said that the plan is 61 million, but disbursed is 56 billion. But again, as we saw on the previous graph, they spent significantly less. The money was distributed through the interagency working group. Also have other institutions providing money for various options. We had 9.3 billion hryvnia of subventions to local 336 projects. Cash expenditures were only at 3.4 billion and only 70 projects completed. Again, that's important. How if they can spend the money on time. This procurement is quite lengthy. Sometimes there are cases when there is no competition, but there are not one. And if there are such delays, it's also possible. Taking that into account, the recovery agency has received more money than they could spend last year. Exactly in 2024, the balance of funds, 23.7, more or less half of what was distributed last year, would be disbursed for those objects which already have been started. For instance, the Ministry of Education has not received money for 2 projects because last year they simply could not start. The time was limited, therefore they are financed this year what started last year for financing. It's very important because there will be less risk that something will not be completed. Also from the liquidation fund from last year and also this year, we have the decision approved that there are some governmental decisions which the liquidation fund, which are not small projects. That's the water pipeline project. We have a separate presentation about it. We have also some funds for the critical infrastructure, the comprehensive recovery of settlements. So these are some governmental decisions. They don't follow the general prioritization. And again, financing from IFIs, that's about absorptive capacity. It also remains a challenge. You can see that the funds that were disbursed last year using EIB projects money spent, that what was so we see that they don't have a capacity on the ground to quickly use this money. So the cash expenditures is not what was allocated. Allocated was much more, but these expenditures that were done last year, there was significantly less. We don't need any additional decisions for this year's money. But again, we see on the graph the plans for 2024. So these plans are higher than the cash expenditures last year. What we have for 2024. The following tranches, something that can be financing recovery from Japan. Again, we are coming back to the capacity and many thanks for your attention. Thank you, Alexander. These figures are very much are impressing, including the money from the European Investment Bank. I think our colleagues who will participate in the discussion, they can react to this. I would really love to hear this feedback. But again, let's come back to the presentation. And one other regular thing which we are following is the procurement in construction. I would like to invite our colleague, Volodymyr Landa, the senior expert of the economic strategy. Volodymyr, could you please tell us what is happening in the procurement? Many thanks, colleagues. Yes, that's our traditional topic on air. What we can say in terms of the procurement analysis in reconstruction. Yeah. Okay, when it comes to analysis of the reconstruction procurement, we can see that the key procurement figures are here. In January, February, 10.7 thousand construction procurements were announced, of which 9.5 thousand were completed. The current procurement value is 17.9 billion hryvnia. If we talk about the completed procurement, that's actually almost 18 billion, including almost 13 billion in February. 83.3% of procurements were made without the use of the electronic system. This is what we call the procurement for the pre-threshold figures. 12.4% were made in the form of open tenders with special features. That's a most traditional procedure. For the ones who foresee the usage of the electronic system, 2.4% were defense procurements. We have limited information about that, and some 2% were made under other procedures. And we have a somewhat different distribution about the value of this procurement. Open tenders with special features accounted for 43.5% of the total value of tenders, 31.3% for basic procurement without the use of the electronic system, and quite a lot, quarter of the amount was meant for defense procurement. In general, if we summarize the most expensive lots in February were defense procurement and road works, also quite a lot of not that huge procurements worth more than 100 million accounted for 18% of the total procurement value. The procurements worth from 10 to 100 million accounted for another 62%. The rest, 20%, was really for some small procurement below 10 million. Who were the organizers and leaders? Top 10 organizers. We see that participants are, a lot of participants are new. Out of them, 6 are coming from the Department of Construction, from various state administrations, 2 joint shareholder companies in the Lviv Oblast. Also, see a lot of new winners. Construction companies and road construction. We can see that on the first place, it's the construction of special construction in Rivne Oblast, and we believe we can explain and put them into single view. Also, we can see that the procurement of February also the pre-threshold procurements, they are taking place with 1 participant. 50% of them are taking place with 1 participant. 60% is taking place with 2 participants. That is over 2 months. Same situation is about the value of this. the number of complaints for some procedures. And if we count only the specific procurements, because the share of one participants was not used for 100 procurements, we have 4 complaints. It doesn't mean that there are violations, but it's a signal to pay attention. Which is very logical because we are also showing you the top media who are publishing most of the research. This is Суспільне, Bigus, Наші Гроші, Radio Свобода, and Слідство.Info. Of course, this is not the only media that published it. Their research and their investigations that promotes media from the information that is coming from the state authorities. If NABU publish good media, they are very much quickly reaching mass media, and there could be some other research from the journalist teams. For this, I'm thanking you for the attention, and we can go to our main topic. Many thanks, Volodymyr. For me, most important takeaways is that you started already to build fortifications, and is that majority of tenders are not very competitive with one participant, and this definitely deserves some attention, because this situation is not normal for the competitive markets, because we are joining the EU, so this has to be changed. All right, so I suggest that we move to the main topic, to the energy efficiency. We have the green course of the European Union, where we also obliged, we as the candidate country, that we will be going over this direction and into account the amount of recovery that Ukraine needs to do to make energy efficiency and green recovery. It's one of the topics which is very much on air at all conferences, many events. So we decided not to stay aside of it. So let's talk about the legal framework, and we will show the results of their analysis. Good afternoon, and you can see my presentation. You can hear me well. Let us start with the energy efficiency in rebuilding. Let us first look at the regulatory framework, who is here to install it. So energy efficiency is definitely the Ministry of Energy, as well as the state energy on energy efficiency and energy saving. We call it Держенерго Efficiency, the Energy Efficiency Fund, Ministry of Communities, Territories and Infrastructure Development, and the Ministry of Economy. Regarding the key laws which are regulating the energy efficiency, that's evidently the law of Ukraine on energy efficiency, also the law of Ukraine on the introduction of new investment opportunities, guaranteeing the rights and legal interests of entrepreneurs for the large-scale modernization of the energy sector, also the law of Ukraine on amendments to the budget code of Ukraine on the introduction of new investment opportunities, guaranteeing the rights and legal interests of business entities for large-scale modernization, as well as the law of Ukraine on commercial metering of heat and water supply. We also have 2 state construction standards. It's DBN, which is called thermal insulation and energy efficiency, as well as another standard, which is called energy saving and energy efficiency. Okay, let's come to what are the existing parameters. Dash and energy efficiency, that's the why this is done, because it's a very effective principles in the European Union, because we want to join it and we have to do this. The state policy in the energy efficiency is directed to the procedures of making energy audit and to the energy auditors setting up their framework and what qualifications should they be. This is also the state policy in energy management. It's when the energy management should be set up and implemented in the local self-government, state authorities, and in the budget sphere, development of the energy service market, implementation of energy efficient measures in the building of public institutions, when we are talking about the cooperation with housing cooperatives, as well as the development of highly efficient cogeneration, creation of conditions for highly efficient production of heat and electricity, implementing the requirements of Directive 2012/27/EU on energy efficiency. Let's come to the National Plan of Action for Energy Efficiency until 2030. This plan was developed on the basis of the Directive EED in cooperation with the Secretariat of the Energy Cooperation, and we have to reach our own. It is guided by the principle of energy efficiency first and the element of the policy of joining Ukraine to the European Green Deal. The national plan will be reviewed every 3 years and includes some set of events. Mostly it's horizontal measures. It's our commitments related to the energy efficiency, including alternative measures. And what was already mentioned, the energy audit, the system of energy management in companies, state target energy efficiency program, also the energy audit and energy management system at the enterprises of various levels, full commercial accounting of consumption of warm energy, potable, cold and hot water, consumer awareness and training programs, including some measures, including taxes on energy, greenhouse gas emissions, introduction of energy labeling and eco-design standards. Apart from that, it also includes certain other measures in the housing sector. When we talk about the directive of EU, including energy certification in buildings, again, these are energy efficiency measures in the state, budgetary sector, and bodies implementing energy management and energy monitoring, renovation of buildings, including of energy efficiency criteria in the public government procedure, city transport, moving to electrical transportation, implementation of the directive of EU about the periodical checks of inspections of motor vehicles and their trailers, as well as the energy efficiency at the stage of energy production and transportation measures to support the improvement of the efficiency of heat supply systems. And as already mentioned, the Ukrainian plan, it also mentions about energy efficiency. Actually, we do have the name of the reform within the Ukraine plan. It's about increasing energy efficiency in public buildings and improving public procurement procedures, taking into account energy efficiency requirements. This reform envisages the adoption of the long-term strategy for modernization of buildings for the period until 2050 and the action plan for its implementation, and it all has to be presented until the second quarter of 2024. If everything is all right, we expect that until end of June, we will be familiarizing ourselves with this. And of course, the following policies and measures should be implemented: strengthening governance in territorial communities. There will be the thermal modernization of public buildings, including initiatives of MFI and activation of the energy service mechanisms. Of course, it's also about programs for thermal modernization of residential buildings, including the work of the Energy Efficiency Fund and the State Fund for Decarbonization and Energy Efficient Transformation. By the way, you can look at photos from their website, how the housing cooperatives are using those programs. For instance, the energy efficiency fund covers up to 70% of costs, and these buildings become, as you can see, like the panel houses, which almost don't keep the warmth. First of all, they are transformed into the energy efficiency. Secondly, less consumption of electric energy, and they're becoming even much more beautiful. It's also transferring from subsidies in into energy consumption to financial support of investment in the thermal reconstruction and modernization of buildings. It's also about approval of requirements of energy efficient purchases in accordance with the principles of energy efficiency first. If we look at Build Back Better and Build Back Greener, let's see what is happening. We have some projects which take into account the energy efficiency, but there is still no single base with all projects. Current projects are aimed at energy conservation and potential energy independence of Ukraine, provided that they can be scaled up. For instance, ambulatoriums in the village of Gorenci, which was reconstructed, and where they had installed solar power plant and the heat pump at the expense of Greenpeace and several NGOs. Also, this other condominiums about thermal modernization of 2 buildings within the framework of the Energa House program. It's also about school, which is called Academy of Intellect in Vorzel. The school was equipped with solar panels. Thanks to them, annual savings will amount to about 80,000 hryvnia. The project was financed by donors and private companies. We understand that energy efficiency is also expensive. We conducted a joint research with the Ministry of Economy. According to the calculations of Pavel Bilik, Ruven Stab, and Dinara Saparova, using the examples of Bucha, it is possible to compare ways of renewing the damaged housing stock in a more energy efficient way. Not always we can get such reports which show how much money is needed to make the recovery energy efficient. And in general, they have identified 4 scenarios for the reconstruction of residential houses. They can be divided more or less into 2 types. It's what we called inertial, what will happen if the housing is rebuilt according to old principles, and already investment scenarios when the reconstruction is done in energy efficient way. That means that large-scale improvements in energy efficiency are complicated by the fact that they're very expensive. When we are trying to upgrade to international standards, and the best scenario, it's when we upgrade to Class A scenarios, when the energy consumption is quite zero, near zero. We can see what is the difference in investment and break-even point, but we can see that the improvement of energy efficiency, we can see that we need actually 318 million euro for 560,000 square meters. Of course, it's a large amount. The community itself will not be able to finance this project, so it's important to engage in international and donor assistance. And in the end, I wanted to talk about the main enemies of energy efficiency. The Analytical Center Green Deal Ukraine presented proposals for green recovery in Ukraine in February 2024, where the emphasis was on industry, agriculture, construction, energy, transport, and management. They defined the main reasons why the energy efficient reconstruction is economically impractical, why it will not give its results. What are the obstacles? First of all, it's low tariffs for utility services. In order to deal with this, we need to raise the tariffs, but to do it earlier than in the plan of Ukraine, because the roadmap will be developed only by the second quarter of 2026. And it's very logical that increasing of tariffs will come even later. So we need to act now. High financial costs for the near-zero restoration. We need to make housing modernization attractive as an investment. It's not always possible for residents of buildings to agree to promote the feasibility of energy efficiency among the population of Ukraine. Therefore, we have to work on raising awareness of necessity of energy efficiency. We have to explain to them about the availability of programs, that they don't have to pay it all. And one more other problem, it's not everywhere we have meters. Therefore, the collection of data on energy consumption is incomplete. Therefore, we have this job to identify residents who don't have meters and to install them. That's all. I would like to thank you for the attention. I would like to also let you know that you can get to know the full version of appendices, whatever didn't come to this main presentation. It's also emphasis on water pipelines, demining, and about e-restoration. That's all from my side. Many thanks. Many thanks, Maria. Many thanks, Anna, who is sent us two links about the strategy in. I suggest that everybody who's interested, please look into that. Let's come to the discussion. Then we'll have Q&A. And the discussion, I would like to talk about the sequence of speakers. I suggest to pass the microphone to somebody from the state authorities. But today we have Irina Chernysheва with us. She is the head of the condominium in Irpin. This is the actual person with her hands, with her brain. Thanks to the residents and thanks to donors, she has renewed factually the residential housing after destructions. And I wanted to talk with Irina, was the first. Please tell us how you restored, what you faced. Did you have any possibility to make it really in an energy effective manner, or the question of expenditures was so acute that you didn't have the chance to talk about the energy efficiency? So how was it happening in practice? Good afternoon to everyone. I think everybody can hear me well. Yes, truly, I am the head of the condominiums in one of the biggest houses of Irpin. We have 408 apartments. It's 18 floors, and it was within the direct distance from Bucha that it was fully in sight of Russian military, and therefore it was quite, in our district, it was the most destroyed. And I just was a little bit late to your meeting because I was giving an interview to TSN TV channel, who came to take an interview from me to have me explain how we did this renovation. Of course, in March 2022, our first works, you can see the house which was built just 2 years back, and it was quite energy efficient to begin with. I'm just trying to reply to the question which pertains to our meeting, because it was insulated with the mineral substance, and it was shot with tanks, with grenade throwers. It was quite difficult. We could not even believe that in the way that it's right now, nobody believes it can come back to this. Nothing reminds us of that our house was used by occupiers. There were some apartments which had only 2 concrete columns, some chairs, some child's toys. You understand how difficult it is to go through these emotions. So how we renewed this? Let me share you the secret of our success. For many years, actually for more than 27 years, I was working in one of the central authorities in the state auditor service. Therefore, this experience of this managerial position, and in general, the connection with a huge number of people who needed to be contacted and to organize them, and we need to really get together to renew the housing. Starting from the 26th of March, when we received the first photo, and until the 20th of March of 2023, when we signed the last act. So the energy efficiency issue was on the agenda and was not at the same time. The first difficult winter with blackouts and switching off electricity we had to live through with the damaged facade. Part of the, I believe half of the building was more or less like bricks without any mineral material. I'm just showing your photos without any mineral insulation, and you can understand whatever is gray. This mineral wool was getting wet because, of course, it was a lot of rain. So they were just falling apart in big pieces. So we entered the winter. You can see the winter. At this time, we already renewed the walls, but the insulation was still not in place. And we were very much afraid that we will be frozen. Of course, I mean, you can get, but most importantly, we were afraid that the system of heating, individual heating, we had gas boilers, and not all the people returned to their houses, that they would be spoiled. Thanks God it was a warm winter. One of the big blackouts for 60 hours. We didn't have electricity at all. And on the 12th of January 2023, we finally could get down to some works to restore the facade with the assistance of the charitable organization which financed this project. This was the fund Leroy Merlin Solidarity. They gave us both the materials for the reconstruction, and also they financed the value of works that were necessary to be done by the construction specialists. Also, they renewed some apartments which were fully destroyed, I mean, to pieces. Nothing was there. One apartment was three-room apartment from the multi kid family. It burned out completely. Nothing was there. So to say that it was not difficult, of course, I can't say so. It was very difficult. It's a permanent communication with the huge number of people. Of course, we were very much worried. The donors were very much worried who sponsored this restorative works because you understand, I, for instance, as the former auditor, and for each spent grivna, we are responsible. Yeah, I also was very much detailed in checking on the quality of the materials, quantity of the materials. But again, the heads of the organizations, the founders, they were very much concerned whether it's going to work out, whether we can fit within deadlines. And actual deadline was the 1st of January 2023, but we managed. On the 26th of May, we completed it all. Today, most of the people returned to our apartment house. Maybe like 70% of apartments people are back. They have residents, they co-owners. Some are renting out. Like some people who were renting apartments went out, but they gave these apartments to some friends. But today, our apartment doesn't look like the Russian invasion was around. Maybe you have any questions, so we'll be happy. Irina, many thanks. I will have a question to you, but I will put it in the Q&A section because I will start the Q&A section myself. Many thanks for your story. Ladies first. Let's go according to this principle, and I would like to ask Anna Ackerman to talk about the research. We have already recollected it today when Maria was talking about the figures that analysts calculated on the example of Bucha, how much energy efficient reconstruction will cost compared to the old standard renovation. So this is the research that was done by Anna's team. Anna, please could you tell us in more detail what you did, what you calculated, what you reached, what will be the problems, and can we really rebuild our housing complex in an effective, energy effective manner? Many thanks to Ms. Irina. Many thanks for today's event. It was very interesting. At using which program you restored? Was it a state program or other donors? This is the questions are in Q&A. Good. Okay, so we'll come back to that question. From my side, let me start off. I would like to gradually move from what Irina was saying. I'm now talking because we're doing a lot of research in order to share how the energy efficiency recovery is ongoing. And really, it's very positive what I'm hearing from the professionals, from the industry of the energy efficiency industry, whose apartment houses also were damaged, that this recovery using also the state programs is taking place in a quite high quality manner. And okay, maybe I can show you some slides. Please speed me up, hurry me up, because I apologize. There will be some English on the slides. I will be speaking Ukrainian, but just didn't manage to translate it well before. But maybe some things you will appreciate just by looking at them. Okay, what I wanted to show to you. By the way, I often recollect and remind our international partners that the reconstruction is taking place already now. I think everybody recognizes this house. It's Striyska Street in Lviv, when the Russian rocket hit this residential house, and the first stage of reconstruction is about over. So we are renewing in parallel that we are fighting back the Russian aggression. Also, we are talking very often how much it is to rebuild the housing complex, and also during your webinars, you're also recollecting some overall figures. But if you look at the number of houses, and if you think about the amount of 250,000 houses, that is really difficult to comprehend. Therefore, Alexander was showing that we are rebuilding not that quickly as the war proceeds, because the scales are really huge. And that's where, if we look recently at the energy infrastructure, then, for instance, Kharkivska heat power station number 5, it was almost fully destroyed by the recent attacks, although they say that this station will take many years, which is true, because this station was supplying heat and energy to the Kharkiv residents. So the question is it still possible whether it will be rebuilt? In any case, because this was the gas station from 1970s, we have to understand, and I will come to this one way or the other, we will be building back a different energy system, and it is also connected with the houses where we live, because construction, production, and consumption, they are all related. If we look at the map, we know where this destruction is mostly all. I also want to show you where the reconstruction is ongoing. That's the program of Energy Efficiency Fund, which is called Vidnovy Dim. It's been mentioned today. This energy efficiency fund was created in order to make basically energy efficiency, implement the most high quality projects exactly in the housing complex, in condominiums of Ukraine. Of course, with the full-scale aggression, the fund had to change its work, and a lot of funds is actually spent exactly on Vidnovy Dim, Restore House. This is exactly the program to renovate the damaged housing for condominiums. And we can see that the biggest number of projects, it's the north, it's the Kyiv region. Also quite interesting that we have Mykolaiv there. And it also is showing the destruction that we have seen on the previous slide. Okay, the fund continues to work, but the energy efficiency program, it's a little bit in the background now. In the first place, it's about restoration of the damaged housing in general, at least that people would have somewhere to live. Now, if we talk about Bucha and our research, honestly speaking, the main figures you have shown, I think the key takeaway from this and transformation of Bucha and what is happening in Irpin, what Irina has shown us, it's really incredible what has changed. Of course, we understand that Bucha has this to change its image abroad because they are very much known for these huge disasters and fears, but they really want to change their image and this build back better. It's about them. If we look about the destructions, we decided to calculate how much it will cost to renovate the damaged houses to the level of energy efficiency. And that's most importantly, we see how difficult, how different can be the price. If we build back to how it used to be, I mean, the old standards, which are no longer there, we're talking about 100 million euro only for Bucha. That's a huge money. If we were to build back to minimum requirements scenario, energy efficiency class D or C, it's twice as much, 214 million. If we build back until near zero scenario, energy efficiency class A with renewables, that's going to be 3 times as much, 318 million euro. In any case, it has a lot of pros because when we are building back better, we are consuming less energy, and we understand that we should be walking out from the war, most likely in the condition of energy poverty. The question will be whether people will be able to pay according to their utility bills. So energy efficiency is one of the most important instruments to overcome energy poverty. Therefore, we have to think how we should renew this. Also, the climatic component is very much important because we are when we are talking about creation of the new economy, more work jobs, the colleagues also calculated, we're talking about hundreds of new jobs, and depending on the scenario, from the complexity of works, the jobs can be even more. And therefore, of course, that's a huge savings of funds. I have some more slides, but also let me send the link to all this presentation. It has a lot of information. Whoever wants to be familiarized, please go ahead. It has some nice information within. The investment can be really different from the various types of housings, from some small private homes to multi-story buildings, and the more high-rise building and the more owners of the building, the less is investment per square meter. For this, if we look at the savings of the energy, we have really various different values, but still the savings can be huge. It can be half of what would be done using the standard scenario if we would build back how it used to be. So most important is the recommendations. Again, we made some serious modeling, but most importantly, that at the municipal level, we will be able to talk with Bucha with what we have under the municipal energy plan. All cities have to develop such plans, which way they are to find the way how they integrate into their own existing plans. And you can see that the authors are recommending that exactly the high-rise buildings have to be prioritized for energy efficiency upgrades. But again, for Ukraine, it's also very important that we've been talking a lot about it, and that's already been started to be implemented, the decentralized energy generation. It's our heat power stations, our hydropower stations. We have under attack nuclear power stations. We lived through the previous winter and we know how difficult it was. And we have to think when we are building back about, we should talk about the possibility how to add generation on the spot. This could be solar panels, this could be heat pumps, etc., etc. We have a lot of recommendations. I will not go over all of them, but what's important, and that also coincides with the recommendations, from Brussels. They have made some 6 criteria for the international financial institutions, how to rebuild better the housing complex of Ukraine. And that's where they're mentioning that's important to build back with some elements of some renewables. It's important to build back to minimum requirements, at least until the existing standards, not just to build back just like that, at least until the existing standards of energy efficiency. And correspondingly, this will be already better. And now I also would like to show to you that the green recovery in Ukraine, it's taking place today, and I already have something to show to you. I'm very much thankful about that, because in 2022, we dreamed, we thought how it will be. In 2023, we had the first pilot projects, and now they're getting more and more. We have a lot of solar panels, especially in energy infrastructure. These are the first pilots that were done by the international organizations, NGOs. This was first of all called by attacks to our energy infrastructure. And already now, if we look at back 3 years down the road, now the communities are not asking why this is necessary. They understand it is a must. There are various other initiatives which are helping to install panels with the accumulators, etc., etc. But I wanted to show you this approach about the definition of the green recovery. That's on the basis of various other discussions came out. There is nothing special here, something very difficult, or I think it's very much down to earth. This the rebuilding until class C or D, if it's new houses, using of at least one type of green technology. This could be solar panels, this could be heat pumps. If we put the heat pump, then this house will be one of the best standards of energy efficiency, even in the European Union. That's also very important. Also, the usage of energy efficient equipment inside, it's very important for kindergartens, for schools, so they could consume less water, etc., etc. Some ecological parameters without asbestos, with the heating lamps, as well as without the extractables. Of course, it's more expensive. The question is where to take the money from. Therefore, the presentation is in English because we're trying to work with donors and try to bring this, because it's also very important for us, for Ukraine, and to understand it ourselves. And one more word, and I will finish, that we have to look at the energy efficiency as the economic possibility. It's not that we are just rebuilding a very specific house. It's more about our role in the European Union, that we can really produce the energy efficient equipment. We did it quite well before. Quite well, some of our factories have been burnt, so we have to renew them, but we really have a lot to offer, and we have to make sure that we can be with materials and equipment that we will use for the reconstruction. So we have to think about some closed loop, not to import everything, but also to do something on the spot, produce something on the spot. Many thanks for your attention. The last point was especially good because we have the market. Unfortunately, this story is not very much connected with something good. Unfortunately, the war has created the market, so our local producers, they can come to the European market that is going the green path. Also, we have the energy efficiency department chief of Hromadas and Territories of Ukraine, Dmitro Petrunin. And we have heard a lot. We have heard a lot of stories, analytics. We want to ask now, what is the vision of energy efficiency recovery within the ministry? Many thanks for the possibility to talk. It's very interesting to look at the materials presented. Many thanks to the previous speakers for such a great analytics. But I would like to say, in the first place, if we go back a little bit to the history, then the Energy Efficiency Fund, started to do the activity which is not theirs. It's about recovery. Yes, it's exactly this so. I remember the beginning of the war, how it all started when the market stopped. And the only question that was of concern to people is just to preserve lives as well as the lives of their loved ones. Not that many people thought about the question of energy efficiency, bringing their houses to some minimum requirements or energy saving. That's all clear. The market stopped, people have left, and unfortunately we did have such houses, such times. And definitely when we came to a conclusion, when we talked to the chief of the Energy Efficiency Fund, which we created, so how shall we do this? Does it really a good time? Is it really a good time for the energy efficiency? It's exactly, we came to a conclusion. The Energy Efficiency Fund is quite a well-developed infrastructure, which was somewhere 1,000 clients using the Energadim program, two packages A and B. So the European Union, who is also the donor of this Energy Efficiency Fund, really trusts this institution because the topic is about transparency in procurement. That's a very interesting case for the European Union because they do trust them. Let's put it this way, because we created not only the fund, which is supporting and stimulating, but also the instrument of making transparent procurement, because the main beneficiary, and it's also the main agents, it's the citizens. The citizens will not let themselves be cheated, and therefore they will control, same as Irina has told us, they will be able to control costs for these construction works. And that's how this came up. Our most urgent question was the recovery, looking at the map, looking at what was happening around Bucha, Irpin, and some other settlements. We understood that this is most likely is the only step. And the Europeans, we also understood that the funds are not sufficient within Ukraine, but we will need a lot of money. Therefore, we understood that such a powerful source of financing will be exactly the European Union or the EU countries, because they have such a huge trust to the Energy Efficiency Fund. We came up with the proposal, we developed some projects, many thanks to the management of the fund. They were very much quickly to understand how to move ahead, and they came to a necessary communication with the European Union, with their partners from Germany. This initiative was very actively supported because they also saw what was happening within Ukraine. And this program was, in fact, already in September 2022, it was launched. The biggest aim of the project was the recovery. Therefore, for the energy efficient component, not that we didn't pay attention. The main objective was to renew it to the original way. If there was the insulation on the wall, that meant that it has to be after the restoration works are over. If it's not was not there, unfortunately, from the point of view of the number of projects which required recovery, we decided at that stage not to expand it to energy efficient measures, just to cover the biggest number of counterparts. Today, this program has a huge popularity thanks for the prepared statistics. It is also mentioned on the website of the Energy Efficiency Fund. We have already some, let's put it rounded to 300 applications from various co-owners to restore. And in parallel to this, we are also coming to the second stage of negotiations with our European partners in such a way that we would not return twice from condominium to energy efficiency fund to combined packages, like for instance the package of recovery with the package of energy modernization. These are very difficult negotiations, let me tell you frankly, because we know our bureaucratic procedures in Ukraine, and we can only guess about the bureaucratic procedures which are now in the European Union. Nevertheless, these negotiations are underway, and I hope that we can make a unification, combining, so we will have to agree only about the requirements to these projects and about co-participation, because this program, Vidnovi Dim, it foresees 100% grant for the recovery of energy efficiency. For instance, Energodim foresees from 40 to 70% of grants, depending on the conditions. There is some sequence in participation and the topic of modernization that this house is selecting. So Energodim is about improvements, and it foresees a certain break-even point. Therefore, we are also developing the mechanism according to which the recovery projects, this will be probably a separate project. It's called Recovery Plus. Let's put it this way, how it will be called. So the recovery works also envisage that they will be covered with 100% grant, and the part that will be directed at, for instance, the improving of performance characteristics or improving of energy consumption or making this object autonomous, namely about alternative sources of heating and energy supplies. I think such a building will be, such works, such package, the second part of it will demand a certain co-financing from citizens because it foresees this break-even point through this tariff component. As Ms. Maria mentioned, Maria Temilina, we don't have enough stimulating tariff in order to stimulate the consumer to invest in energy efficiency. That is interesting, but economically not that attractive, because we all saw it at the slide. And of course, we have to look at each example separately of various houses because each of them have their own peculiarities. But I can definitely tell you that today's tariffs are not enough attractive to stimulate the consumer because the break-even points are like for 15, 20, 25 years. That's a huge term. The only thing which I wanted to correct, it's not that the tariffs have to be improved, have to be raised. They have to be made economically interesting for the consumer so they would afford to buy such an energy service. And they have to be also interesting for the companies so that the company would have the possibility to start working and to supply this continuous services. What concerns the green transformation and green recovery, that's what I wanted to also add. That will significantly increase the cost of the projects from recovery with regular thermal modernization. But it's important to understand if we are bringing the object to nearly zero emission building NZ, that means that this house, according to a standard, it should comply with the class that its energy supplies should be at least 50% from the alternative energy sources, that is solar or other renewables, biomass or heat pumps, although they have their energy supplies from electricity, but they nevertheless belong to alternative energy supplies. So in such a way, if this housing covers 50% of its need from energy, from green energy, we can say, okay, how we can look at it? If the energy is, if the alternative source of energy is there, apologies for this, that we can cover it in any way. For instance, if there are some problems with energy supplies in many settlements and the access to traditional source of energy is not there, then the value of introducing green energy sources for each building on each object, it grows not by 50%, not to that capacity that it covers, it grows by 1000%, because that becomes the only source for giving electricity to this energy, to this building. In order to support energy efficient technologies, decarbonization, we have started the decarbonization fund. This is not exactly this is the budget level fund, which is confirmed and with this CO2 fund, and the administrator of this fund, the main administrator of this fund will be the Minister of Infrastructure, the manager of the lowest level, and the state energy for energy efficiency will be the responsible ones. The funds will be directed, first of all, to support households from the point of view of implementation of energy efficiencies, lowering energy consumption, its optimization, because lowering is also the topic which is the notion that is not very, that is quite dubious, let's put it this way. On the one hand, you can turn off the light and we have decreased the energy consumption. From the other hand, what is different when we talk about energy efficiency? We are consuming as much as we need to satisfy our minimum needs. Therefore, it is exactly the decarbonization fund will stimulate in the first place the projects from energy efficiency, as well as implementation of energy efficient sources in installation of solar panels, solar collectors, as well as energy accumulation systems. But that's when it comes to the housing complex. Also, using the decarbonization fund, we will be stimulating ecofactoring. Also, in accordance to this, we will be stimulating the industrial companies to buy more energy efficient equipment and lowering of costs and decreasing of greenhouse emissions. These are most important things. I can talk more. Apologize that I'm talking that much. I can talk even more about the state policy, especially that the ministry today is the main body that formulates the policy from energy efficiency. What has already been mentioned today about the strategy of thermal modernization, it is already developed. In the end of previous year, we approved it at the last meeting of the government. This was on the 29th of December, and we already started to work over it. Apart from that, our department, together with RSC and the technical assistance projects, we are developing 3 projects of increasing energy efficiency. The first concerns the increase of energy efficiency in the water supply system. because the water is the source of life and it's very valuable for us. Number two, it's the biggest consumer of natural gas in the housing complex. It's Teplo Kommun Energo companies, utilities, and the programs will be aimed at improving energy efficiency in this housing complex. And the third program is thermal modernization, because we can write a lot of interesting documents of the state policy, adopt really cool European laws, but without funds, without physical implementation, all of it doesn't work, unfortunately. We can stimulate, but we can also support, but without the real stimulation of the population, without increasing of the awareness of the population, support of business for the implementation of the energy efficient technologies, without all of this, without stimulating all of these sectors on behalf of the state, this will be very slowly moving. Therefore, we are developing such programs. And I think throughout this year, they will be adopted. The deadline of these programs until 2030. Correspondingly, they will foresee the combination of sources of the state budget together with the local budgets in consolidation with the local budgets, as well as aggregation of the donors' assistance and interaction with consumers, because yes, it will foresee the participation of consumers in co-financing of such measures. That's all. In case there are any questions, yes, there are some questions related to registration. I promised that Q&A block will start from Ms. Irina and the sources of financing. How have you distributed funds, from where you could take which money? Thank you for your question. Yes, it was important to mention this in the beginning of my report. I want to tell you that more or less we had 4 stages. The first stage was we had to independently restore the carrying blocks. In our case, this was concrete monolith columns. After we received the expert conclusion, we understood that without the recovery of this monolith concrete columns, no further recovery would be possible. Therefore, let me also recollect the Energy Efficiency Fund. We turned to them, we looked at what was there on their website, we had some conversation that such program was to be started, and I hope that it will be launched even earlier. I had a lot of expectation that will come to the program of Vidnovi Dim, but it came out in the end differently, because one of the conditions to get such money was actually the restoration of these carrying structures. Only after that we were able to submit documents to get grants from the Energy Efficiency Fund. Therefore, we engaged the contractor who calculated the cost estimate, and the other colleagues gave us 1.5 million hryvnia. Therefore, we had to do the fundraising. Together with the dwellers, we collected more than 2 million hryvnia. And in August 2022, the works started. I mean, the works on recovery of the monolith structures. We understood that the winter was around the corner, and you understand without the windows, it would be very unsafe, because we could lose the house fully. So we could complete all those works during 2.5 months. And in parallel, I was doing the questions of searching the new sponsors to do the facades, because the amount was not 1.5 million. The minimum was 2.5. This is just to really paint it, just to cover the black holes but the normal way was 6.5 million hryvnia. That's where we received assistance from the city authorities. We had some sponsors visiting us, but then everybody disappeared because everybody wanted to make a good presentation, good project. But when they calculated the cost estimate, of course, they understood that not everybody could be in possession of such amount of money. The second stage was the assistance from the state, from the Kiev Oblast military administration. We received from them windows for almost the whole house, and in our house, some 80% of windows were damaged. Even if you go, when you look closely, there are either cracks or the shrapnel damage. So it can't be the place. After we will get the windows, we will prepare the documents. Because we couldn't supply the documents to energy efficiency, we need to decide on, we need to set up on the contractor. We need to make the general meeting of participants for the participation. Those who don't know about it, actually, we have 1.5 months to make such a meeting, because to collect 50% of votes for the draft, that we don't have people in the house, that's almost unreal. Especially when we created this condominium, we foresaw in our charter voting for all important decisions which pertain to property, 50%, not like the typical 2/3. I apologize, we have some more questions, and unfortunately 5 more minutes are left. Just give me 30 more seconds. So we made a decision to cooperate with the charitable organization Leroy Solidarity, who allocated these funds for recovery. But in parallel, we did also work with the mission of Red Cross in Ukraine, who gave the assistance to our vulnerable population, pensioners, multi-kid families, families with people with disability. So we had 4 grant providers, we as the co-owners, the state with this windows, Leroy Merlin, and the Red Cross. Thank you. Many thanks to you. So the sources of financing is everything you could reach, everything you should definitely make use. And that's a very proper approach. Yes, exactly. Don't refuse, don't bring your hands down, just keep on knocking on doors. You will have it opened. We have 3 questions, which are quite good. Yeah, we will be delayed a little bit, but that's a question to Dmitro. I believe mostly to Dmitro. Some colleagues may want to reply, but take into account that we have really little time, just very quickly to reply. The first question, does the ministry use the criteria in brackets, the minimum price with the maximum energy efficiency, or the percentage of the recycling? Could that be a criteria, or could it improve the project for its selection? Let me briefly reply. In the first place, the ministry has set up minimum requirements to energy efficiency. That's class C or class D. In several cases, we have some adjusting coefficients, and we set up our requirements using this criteria in order to keep minimum requirements for reconstruction. Let's put it this way, the legislation demands, if we are renovating the housing, it should comply with the minimum requirements for energy efficiency, and we're sticking to that principle. Apart from that, throughout the previous year, we, together with GIZ, we had developed some criteria to getting to energy efficient procurements. They are already tested on Prozoro platform, and more or less we can already use them. The third part, it's about defining also criteria of the full life cycle. These criteria are also being finalized and they will be implemented. Apart from that, there will be the necessary recommendations on application of these criteria of the life cycle of buildings that pertains housing, the normative term for maintenance, and the special materials that were used for its construction. Thank you. That's also a partial reply to the second question about registration. So allow me to combine it 2 and 3. I think it really deserves to combine them. So I think we will address it to Anna Ackerman and in second place to Dmitro. I will ask shortly whether any contractors, any stakeholders, are they interested in green reconstruction, or they are afraid of these high costs and they say to reconstruct the way it is. And do they know how to do this? Do they know what is this green reconstruction and which approaches they have for its usage? Are they interested? Do they know? Do they want? If we were to put it very briefly, the process is ongoing. The market is developing slowly. And in order to implement other high quality projects, we need the understanding from all sides, from the consumer, why they need it, very often the consultant who's working on that. And if it's a consultant who's working with NEFCO or with GLIP, when they already know these nuances of energy efficiency, of improved quality or green components, so they understand. And as I already mentioned, this market is slowly developing. More and more people are around. Of course, we need more scale, but nevertheless, it's moving. And definitely the ones who are performing these works, it's important that this would be done in high quality manner. There will be many problems. We will not stop here. We partially mentioned about it. And it's, again, if it's, again, something green, it's something imaginative, but now it's very specific things. Once again, if these panels, when it's not understandable why they're needed, now we understand when there is no electricity, then it's becoming really expensive. So we are perceiving it really in a new way. So if we talk about the increased energy efficiency, Metro confirms that we're saying that at least we have to bring it to existing standards, which are in Ukraine. They are normal, adequate, and to add these green components. And one last thing I want to mention, it's what Alexandra has shown about this low absorption of funds. Because any project, any financial institutions, it's a long life cycle. And therefore, high quality projects, everything takes time. By the way, Ms. Irina also has said how much it takes time for the implementation of each project. That's always more than 1 year. Therefore, it's not possible to physically to do this. But once again, when it comes to this grant program, the communities don't have people who can prepare high quality projects. So we do need managers, project managers, who would help all. And I understand that many are already working in the Ministry of Restoration and Dream, and that's very much needed because we will not be able to move ahead without this. Many thanks. Apologies for some personal stuff. Thank you, Anna. Let us end with one question, which we have in Q&A. And maybe all three today's speakers will try to give 87 square meters is the destroyed housing. They calculated some 2.3 million hryvnia. That's like 55,000 euro. Is it possible to make a new energy efficient house instead of the ruined one? Let us be honest. If we're talking about the construction of a regular house, not even under the standard that equals the minimum conditions, such construction will be from 300 to 500 meters per square meter. That's, of course, without the equipment. That's production of the exterior and maybe some internal generation. So if we were to bring this housing to some minimal conditions, this will be $500 up to $700 per square meters. So 87 square meters, let's multiply by $700. And what is this? Now let's put 140. So it's 2.4 million. It's exactly more or less the same amount that was quoted. Yes, but let's put it this way. Regarding the conditions of receiving these funds, if it's private funds, it's understandable. If it's targeted funds, which are provided for the restoration of the existing housing, we need to study the conditions under which this is given instead of the old house or for the modernization. So is it for the recovery and modernization of the existing that received the destruction or the production of the new house? Colleagues, in case somebody else wants to say just a few words, please do so and we will complete today's event. Allow me to say just a few words that we need to follow the suit of Miss Irina when we're talking about the common property. Definitely will not be enough funds in the majority of cases. So definitely you should be searching for all possible ways, and donors have to be searched because they're there some one way or the other, and they are searching for some good quality projects. So I also hope that we'll be able to launch this through Dream, maybe public housing, but also maybe a housing complex that will appear there whenever it's possible to find this match, Donor Plus project. And I also call on everybody to work to make sure that the projects would have a better component, something that the partners are searching for, some climatic component, the sustainability component. Very often that is demonstrated in energy efficiency. Therefore, today's discussion has been very important, and for our international partners, it is perceived even in a wider way. So yes, this question should be on our agenda on a permanent basis for our reconstruction. Thank you, Alexandra. Many thanks. Two aspects. One thing that Anna showed using the figures, it's exactly what we talked last time. For recovery, we need a lot of money because we want to build better than it used to be. And that has to be taken into account because we're now talking about point-to-point recovery, but once becoming massive, then it will be a lot of money, which is not there yet. The second option, I would like to stimulate everybody because there are projects which are rebuilt in energy efficient manner. We have the DRP portal. I would like to ask all NGOs to join it and to monitor the objects which are being rebuilt today and to write your conclusions on this portal. For this, we have also sub-grants. In April, we'll have a new competition, so please be a part of this monitoring, whether it's transparent, whether it's energy efficient. Many thanks for this invitation. I will put it in chat, Big Recovery Portal. Please come in, be interested. I hope that all that will be recovered, all projects will be finally on that portal. Just very quickly, I would like to make a certain accent using this Leroy Merlin solidarity. For international donors, it was very important that everything would be transparent, honest, and open. They're looking at our country from the availability of corruption. And for me, it was a very principal issue. It's important to make these positive projects, positive images, in order to attract as many donors as possible for the recovery. Transparency is a key. Everybody should see that. Okay, we are above time. Many thanks to all participants, to all speakers for staying over. Many thanks to speakers who have joined us today. And traditionally, I would like to call on everybody, those of you will listen to us as a record, in order that we have less distraction, in order for Russia not to be able to have that pain that Russia has already done. Please help the army, donate to armed forces, and our traditional, we are the ambassadors of the Leleka Foundation, but you can choose any organization, and to help all of us to win. Many thanks to everybody. Have a quiet evening. Goodbye.